Dodgers were hot until they're not. They went 7-6 on their 13 games in a row. Not great in a few areas, not great injury wise. There's a lot to get into. Let's get into it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, that's just someone that listens or watches every day, can make it easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live like we are tonight once again here on YouTube. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. My name is Vince Samperio, usually joined by co-host Jeff Snyder. Technically, I'm joined by Jeff, but he's just in the behind the scenes right now because his voice is still giving out, putting up a fight, unlike the Dodger offense last night. So, yeah, there you go. There's Jeff. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team over, a few different ways over the last decade. We've been doing this podcast here for 5 years. And, we've been doing a podcast together for a little bit longer than that. So we're not quite, insiders or anything like that. We're just here to bring you smart and thoughtful takes about the Dodgers, and that's what we're going to try to do today. Obviously, it is not a fun episode. The Dodgers lost their first series loss to the Diamondbacks in LA since 2018, I believe. I saw Bob Nightingale's tweet. It's hard to trust the Bob Nightingale tweet, but I'm going to trust it for now. Tyler Glasnow was just okay, 3 runs in 5 innings. Nothing to write home about. The offense put up 0 runs and has kind of been a little bit of a theme here in terms of the offense. The Dodgers just played 13 games in 13 days. They ended up 7-6. They did win 4 in a row at one point, and so that can tell you how the other games went. Not that great, but when it comes down to it, it's been a little bit of combination of a few things. Obviously, bad play, struggles offensively. Mostly offensively, because the Dodgers have still not, or last night they allowed more than 4 runs, but for the most part, they've allowed 4 runs or less most of the time. A little bit of, tough luck injury-wise and just guys not performing. And, Eric Steven, our buddy over there, he had a tweet about the Dodger offense during this 13-game stretch, and the Dodgers were hitting just .213, slugging just .357, averaging 3.69 runs per game during the 13 straight days. They were held to 3 or fewer runs 7 times in the last 13 games. They were only held to that 8 times in the first 39 games. So obviously right now the offense is leaving a lot to be desired. That has more to do with the bottom of the offense, the bottom of the lineup, more so than anything. But Mookie, we talked about before, he had that hot streak to start the season power-wise. And even though he's still hitting here and there and still, hitting above 300, well above 300, a little bit of the power is gone. And if the bottom of the order is not getting on base, Mookie's hits aren't driving in runs, and then you're counting on, Ohtani and Freddie. And Ohtani has been obviously playing very, very well offensively. But it's just, it seems like, Mookie will get a hit in the first, Ohtani won't. Next time up, Mookie won't get a hit, Ohtani will. Freddie Freeman's been struggling with runners on base and, a little bit scuffling to a certain extent. We talked about him in depth the other day. And then, Will Smith. Like I said, it's one of those where you look at Will Smith hitting over 300 and Mookie hitting over 300 and Ohtani hitting over 300. Freddie was around 300. He's down to 286 now, but they seem to get the hits at different times. And if they're not putting those hits together at the same time, unfortunately, the bottom of the order is not really helping out. Elieser Hernandez his OPS is down to 775 now. He's still up there in RBI and still contributes when he can, but it's not something that you can necessarily count on him in a big situation right now. Muncie's been hurt. We'll talk about that a little bit. Lux has been hitting better of late, but even then, right now with Muncy out, the lineup gets to number 5. When Teoscar is like I said, a hit or miss, and then it kind of becomes a little bit of a black hole at times. You have Lux hitting a little better of late, but Lux being your number 6 hitter, not ideal right now. Andy Pages has really cooled off, and a thought there of is he going to last up here? Is he going to be able to figure it out, or was it just a hot start and now he has to make those adjustments? And we don't know if he's going to make those adjustments. Jason Hayward's getting back to it, but still wasn't that great before he got hurt. Did have the homer and a couple hits since came back, but not ideal. And then you have Kike and Rojas splitting time at third. That's kind of what you're gonna get. You don't know what you're gonna get out of those guys. So all in all, 7-6 is still winning record. The Dodgers are still well ahead in the NL West, and still one of the best teams in baseball record wise. But definitely, there's some concerns, and for me, the concern is now in the moment right now, not so much the long term concern, because I see the complaints and obviously frustration, and I feel it too, of, oh man, these guys aren't hitting, or this is what's going to happen in October, and blah blah blah. And if everything the Dodgers did this offseason, for everything they did this offseason, if Gavin Lux is hitting 200 or whatever, and OPSing under 600 and batting 6th in October, then yeah, something went really wrong with the Dodgers. Or Andrew Friedman got priced out of stuff at the deadline, or whatever the case is. I do think that whatever team is out there right now, they're trying to figure it out. And the Dodgers have gone through this every season, just at different times, whether it's they start off slow, get hot, whether it's they get slow, they start off hot, they get a little slow, then they get hot again, whatever the case is. For the most part, they always have winning records over the course of the month, but they have little stretches here and there. And again, if this continued to be the way they played, the offense continued to put up less than 5 runs a game and blah, 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 and everything else, I don't think come October you're going to see Gavin Lux, and you're going to see, Jason Hayward, and you're going to see Andy Paez or whatever, everyone that's struggling right now. I don't think you would see them in those situations. You might see one of them, maybe 2 of them, but definitely not, 3 or 4 of them, kind of how the Dodgers are right now. And I think that's where the perspective comes into play. The Dodgers need to know, is Gavin Lux a viable option to be in our starting lineup? Is Andy Paez a viable option to be in our starting lineup? Is, whoever else a viable option to be in the starting lineup? Are these other guys viable options to be bats off the bench? If we lose one of our top 3 guys, if in an unfortunate situation, what is the backup plan? They lost Muncy. There was no backup plan at the moment. I think if this was July 22nd and they lost Muncy, and Oblique, even though they believe in he was taking grounders and he was supposed to hit, even if they believe he's going to be back, it's still risky to not go out and try to do something. So again, it's a loss in May. It's 2 series losses to division teams in the last couple weeks. Annoying, but I don't think it means anything for the long term. I don't think it's the lineup in May is not going to be the lineup in October, and realistically, they're going to get better if they need to, and they do need some guys to start playing better in that case. And that's where it really comes down to, is if Gavin Lux can play himself into solidify his role, then okay, that's good. Now we move on to left field. Okay, how do we fix left field? How do we fix right field? How do we fix, whatever the case, even backup catcher? We've been talking about that for a while now. So it's one of those where it's annoying right now. The offense is struggling. It's not fun to kind of watch this team sometimes, but I'm not worried about it long term. In the moment right now, yeah, it's annoying, concerning to a certain extent that some of these guys aren't turning it around or are getting it better. But whatever the case, that's how it goes. So the Dodgers have had a little bit of injuries here and there, pitching wise, hitting wise. We'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit about shortstop as well, just because I know Mookie Betts went there last night, and people like to talk about how we need another shortstop. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is clutch. The Dodgers weren't clutch last night, but Game Time is always clutch because they have killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and they have the lowest price guarantee, the Game Time guarantee, which takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means you get your tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app usually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So, you might as well just drive to Dodger Stadium and once you're in the parking lot, then you can find your tickets on the Game Time app. They got last minute deals for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They got flash deals. They got zone deals, which, just let you pick a section and they'll give you some seats in that section. And remember the Game Time, the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row and cheaper than what you got them for, they will credit you 110% of the difference. So go download the Game Time app right now and take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. If you download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. NBA and NHL are getting down to the wire, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. If you had put $5 down on the Mavericks to win last night, or tonight if you're watching right now, you would have got $150 in bonus bets on top of that. If you had put $5 on the Dodgers to win, you would not have got the $150 in bonus bets. So $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers, and you can go to every dayer by listening or watching every day. Go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text updates from us, and you can text us any questions or comments or thoughts you may have. And if you're on YouTube watching us, you can also go over to Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. All right, so like we talked about with Muncy's injury, 13 games in a row, a lot of right-handed pitchers. This would have been a perfect time for Max Muncy to get going again. He had hit a little bit of a dip in terms of, just not being as productive, wasn't homering as often, whatever the case was, but this would have been a perfect time for him to get on a roll. And unfortunately, he did get hurt. He missed some time. And like I talked about earlier, like now you have Kike Hernandez and Miguel Rojas splitting time at third base, which means Kike Hernandez has to face right-handed pitching sometime. And, from all we've seen throughout the years, that's not his forte. Miguel Vargas, as good as he's been this year offensively and, better than we expect, I guess, it's still not great. It's not something you can count on. You can count on him to not strike out, but you can't necessarily count on him for much more than that, other than putting the ball in play, which is sometimes all you need. But again, on an everyday basis, your third baseman is not somebody you're looking for to just put the ball in play. You look at the pitching side, and obviously the Dodgers pitching has been pretty solid, even with all the injuries. But we've talked about, Gratterall's been out for the whole season so far. Evan Phillips has been down. There's been other guys hurt. Well, Buehler just came back. They got Ryan Brazier's down. They got Joe Kelly down. Like that's 4 key pieces to a bullpen that are down. And the Dodgers have had to do the shuffling. And we talked about the shuffling the other day and how it can help in finding, diamonds in the rough and those hidden gems out there. But it also means that there's nights where you're going to put Elieser Hernandez out there and he's not going to pitch very well. And there's nights where you're going to have to decide between, Yohan Ramirez, who's already been let go twice this year, Anthony Banda, a guy that has been pitched well for the Dodgers, but again, he was designated for assignment recently. It's one of those things where you're counting on guys that have been casted off by other teams. And when it's one guy and you are able to have some time to work with him and, whatever you feel the reason you got him for, or whatever you saw in him that you could change, then yeah, but these guys are coming in and suiting up the next day or 2 days later. And it's hard to, really have anything other than, hey, what do you throw? And we're going to try a couple things here and there, but that's really all you can get on. So, I think the bullpen injuries has been masked by the fact that the starting pitchers have been really good. And then they've been able to, mix and match here and there and move guys around and be successful with it. But I do think it's one of those where over the course of time, it kind of shows the cracks. And we saw that, Elieser Hernandez had to pitch twice this series and came in both times and gave up at least one run. Ryan Yarbrough struggled a little bit today as well. That's not something we're used to, but he is in a completely different role than he's been in the past. He was able to get away with throwing once a week, multiple innings. Maybe, he started getting into twice a week. Now he's almost a normal reliever where he's pitching 2-3 times a week at an occasion. And with 13 games in a row, yeah, he's going to have to pitch with some of those games, and he's not used to it. And, no excuses for him. I'm sure he wouldn't make that excuse, but that's just the nature of the beast. When it comes to the offense, it's one of those where, Muncy out, you're moving guys around, and your offense is already struggling. You have guys that aren't hitting very well, and when you take out one big battle lineup, everyone else has to step in, and the Dodgers don't have the depth they've had in years past. It's one of those where they don't have somebody ready to go. And even if they did have somebody ready to go, a la Miguel Vargas, a la Andy Páez earlier this year, we saw how that can play out. It's not a matter of are they going to struggle? They are going to struggle at some point, and can they recover from it? And that's where Páez is right now. 0 for 4 last night, 2 strikeouts. Hit into a double play the other night. He did hit the ball hard, but the results do matter sometimes. And it's one of those things where, is he somebody that can play in the majors on an everyday basis right now? And it's one of those where we'll talk about him in the next segment of, how the Dodgers kind of approach rookies in general and why they maybe can't necessarily approach rookies that way. And then you move over to shortstop, and I was following the game on my phone, wasn't really paying attention, wasn't watching it physically, and I get a couple messages about, do the Dodgers need to go after a shortstop, or do the Dodgers need to move Mookie Betts off shortstop? And I assumed Mookie Betts made an error, and he did make an error, throwing error. And this is one thing where, again, it's May. Everyone's freaking out right now. And I'm not saying it's May in the fact that Mookie's going to get better defensively. I can't say that for sure. But if Mookie continues to struggle defensively at shortstop, they're going to do something, whether it's go get a shortstop, either defensive shortstop, move people around, figure it out, or they go get a legitimate shortstop that can be, offensive and defensive threat, and they move Mookie back to second. And at that point, you kind of see what Lux is up to in terms of offense. You look at what's going on. On May 22nd, Mookie being not great on defense, not a big deal. The Dodgers are winning games. It's not costing them games. Maybe it's cost them runs here and there, but I don't think it's cost them any games specifically. Now, if it's, again, July 22nd and Mookie Betts still hasn't really improved, and, you're not sure if you can trust them in an October postseason series, then, yeah, you have to look for a shortstop. And with the Brewers off to a good start, Willie Adames was the big name, and he might not be there. The Brewers could trade him. They traded Hader when they were in contention, but that didn't go over well in the locker room. And I don't know if they would try to do that again. Obviously, Bo Bichette is the big name that's been mentioned the last couple of days in terms of the Blue Jays may be open to trading him. Reportedly, the ask, or what they would be asking for, is a lot. The Dodgers do have a lot. It would be a year and a half of him. That's probably something we get into tomorrow on the off day a little bit deeper, but it's one of those things. Again, it's May 22nd. Moving Mookie back to second base right now and not having a viable option offensively, like, if Gavin Lux was still hitting 150, then okay, I can say, you know what, move Mookie to second, let Rojas play short, and we just take that. Rojas is hitting better than Lux at this point. But Lux is now showing some signs. And now you can't just say, okay, Mookie, go play second. Lux, you're out of here. And, let Rojas play short. You can't do that right now. You have to kind of let this play out and see what you have with Lux. And then you can figure things out. So, yeah, is Mookie going to go back second eventually this year? Probably. But right now on May 22nd, I'm not that worried about it in the sense of it's not, if it becomes a real issue where the Dodgers have lost multiple games because of it, then yeah, they would have to address it. But I don't think we're there yet. But we could be there. I don't know. It's there. There's a reason hasn't been someone that played outfield so well in the first part of their career, and they tried to go play, even though he played shortstop growing up. It's still a way different ball game. So the Pajes, Elieser Hernandez, a lot of these guys on the roster. Should they be on the roster? We'll talk about it. Remember to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the number one fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members, the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks, let's take a look at PrizePicks for Thursday. There is an NBA game. Yes, there's an NBA game right now. Tyrese Halliburton is at 19.5 points. He got over that, I believe, in game 1. He's going to be chucking threes. The only way the Pacers have a chance to win is if he's putting up a lot of shots. So I would take the over on his 19.5 points. And then you look at Derek White, 9.5 rebounds and assists. I'd probably take the over on that. If the Celtics are going to win, they need Derek White to be good all around. So you pick those two, and you can pick more. The Dodgers stats aren't quite up for tomorrow's game yet, but there will be. And there's no Dodger game tomorrow, but stats for all the MLB games and any other sports going on, go check it out. So PrizePicks, number one fantasy sports app. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB in all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks app. Code LOCKEDONMLB in all lowercase and get a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, that's someone that listens or watches every day. We've got a few everydayers here since we've been running these lives. Shout out to all you guys that are here, listening to us talk about the Dodgers. We appreciate you. And if you're not one of those people, you can be one. If you're not watching live, you can listen on the podcast every morning. You can watch on YouTube every morning or in the evening or afternoon. But, your mornings are probably best. There's no Dodger game tomorrow. So you have all day to find 30 minutes to carve out and listen to this episode. I know it's tougher to listen to them after losses, but, that's how we grow stronger. So, all right. There's not a lot of positive to get into from last night's game. So we'll kind of look forward and see what's on the horizon for the Dodgers. And one of those guys with question marks is Andy Pajes. Andy Pajes had, like I mentioned, went 0 for 4 last night. He has really been struggling here the last couple weeks now. Even the last more than that, but the last couple weeks for sure. He's hitting 132 in the last 15 games with an OPS under 400. So not ideal, just the one home run. He struck out 20 times in 53 at-bats. That was the biggest thing with him when he first came up, is that he wasn't striking out a lot. And we had thought, okay, maybe he learned something, or maybe he picked something up. And then he was hitting over 300. And we're like, okay, I don't know if we expected him to hit over 300. We did expect some of the power, and he did show some of that power. And now we're seeing the Andy Pajes that maybe we could have expected, striking out a lot, not hitting for average. Still has a chance at power, but hasn't necessarily had that power with him either, because he's not making too much contact. So it's right now you're in a tough spot because, one, you don't really have anybody else. The other guy that you have is James Outman, who just got sent down because he was struggling so much. You have Chris Taylor, who's been struggling a lot and hardly gets, playing time these days. And, do you swap out a Pajes for a Chris Taylor and hope Chris Taylor can get going? realistically, that's what the Dodgers are trying to find right now. Someone to catch fire and get a hot hand and let them play. And that's kind of what we come down to is, yeah, and Jeff brings up a point right here where Paez is still providing good defense, and at some point that's gonna be the deciding factor. Like, it's between Andy Paez and Miguel Vargas. Miguel Vargas can really only play left field. We don't know if Vargas is gonna be a hitter this time or not. He has had a couple hits since he came up, but he also hasn't had hits in some other at bats. So it's we there's a lot of talk about Dave Roberts and everything else that when the Dodgers struggle, and even when they don't struggle, there's always talk about Dave Roberts. But this isn't easy to put this together, and it's not necessarily his fault. Like we mentioned, injury, Muncy messes up a couple of things, and then two, like it's not Dave Roberts' fault that James Outman is having a sophomore slump and so bad that he got sent down. It's not Dave Roberts' fault that Chris Taylor can't hit a baseball right now or can't hit one at least good enough to get a base hit. It's not his fault that some of these other guys are, Gavin Lux is struggling. And it's also, you could say, okay, well, that's Andrew Friedman's fault then. But again, I don't think if you would have told me Gavin Lux is hitting, 212 and James Outman was hitting 160 or whatever he was hitting, and Chris Taylor's hitting under 100, on May 22nd, I probably would have been like, man, I didn't think that was possible. And yeah, maybe you could have seen some of it if you, if you're more negative than I am, but I don't think that's the issue. I think it's guys just not performing, and that puts more pressure on the top of the order. And like I mentioned, when the top of the order is still doing well, but they're not hitting at the same time or in the same inning, then that makes up for nights where you get 0 runs or a 13-game stretch where you're scoring less than 4 runs. And that's where the Dodgers are at right now. For Paez, obviously he's bought himself at least a few more weeks, I would imagine at this point. And if James Outman is hitting like 350 or, whatever down there in OKC, that swap could happen eventually. But for now, I think it's one of those where Paez is going to get that extra time and he's going to get at least 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe to see if he can make those adjustments back to the pitchers adjusting to him. Elieser Hernandez, I've talked about him a few times, and he came up and made that spot start and was really good, 6 innings, 3 runs. And then he's been in 2 relief roles this week and has given up runs both times. Gave up 2 home runs in one game, and then last night he gave up a run and, had to go multiple innings, but did give up another home run. So that's now 3 home runs. And then I think he gave up one of the other home runs in his start. So maybe not, I don't remember. But yeah, he's a guy that's probably, well, one, you knew they had some sort of faith or belief in him because he's still here. If it would have been a Nabil Crismat, a Dinelson Lamet situation, Eduardo Salazar, any of those guys, their situation, he would have made that spot start and he would have got sent back down. But clearly they have some belief in him that he can be somebody for this team. But again, now they're in a tough spot because, well, not necessarily in a tough spot right now, but once any of these guys comes back from the bullpen, there will be in a tough spot. Like, okay, do we give up on Elieser? Do we hope that he passes through waivers, or do we hope that, all that type of stuff? So I think he's around for right now just because there's not really anybody else down there to bring up. And I think that's kind of what is, the thing with him. The Dodgers have a lot of guys right now that are probably not for sure major league pitchers. They're kind of guys that are maybe a little bit more, 3A, 4A type pitchers that we don't know, or the Dodgers haven't had the time to work with him, or they don't have the stuff, to make it work. And, again, the pitching hasn't been an issue, but we can see how it could become one very easily because let's just say Glasnow had gone, even if Glasnow went 6 innings, gave up no runs, the Dodgers scored no runs. Elieser Hernandez comes in and gives up a home run, and now the Dodgers are down 1-0, and then now they lose. So it's one of those things where, and you give up 1 run in 9 innings, you're not going to always blame the pitching, but you think about like, oh man, if they had somebody else there, would that have been a better situation? Would we have gone to maybe extra innings? So I think right now it's frustrating the way the Dodgers have been playing. In terms of, offensively. And like I said, when you count on Tyler Glasnow and expect him to go 7 innings, no runs, and then he underperforms last game against the Reds, and now he underperforms this game a little bit. That's annoying because then now you're seeing more pitchers, and the more pitchers you see it's one of those where, when the Dodgers start a series, we always hope they can get into the bullpen that early, that first game, so they can see multiple arms. And by game 2, 3, or 4, if it's a 4-game series, they've seen everybody and they can, adjust to it. Where that's kind of where the Dodgers are right now. They don't have the depth in the bullpen to, throw you 6 different arms that are all legitimate major league pitchers. They have like 2 or 3 of those. They have 2 or 3 of those, with 1 or 2 of those being Michael Grove and Alex Vesia, who have proven capable, but I don't know if I trust them yet. I have to trust them right now as a Dodger fan because that's all they got. But that's kind of what we're at right now. And it's, again, all of this to say the Dodgers are still very good record-wise, and 7-6 in a 13-game stretch is a lot better than 6-7, is a lot better than 4-9. Like, it could be a lot worse, but definitely something to look forward to. Now they head on the road. They got Cincinnati, they got New York, they come back home. We'll see. Cincinnati, they did a good job taking the last 3 of that series. Cincinnati's still not a good offensive team right now with all the injuries they have to their lineup. And the stadium in Cincinnati is a little bit of a hitter's park. So maybe the Dodgers can get the offense going, and hopefully the pitching can hold the Reds offense down. So that's a lot to say for a game that wasn't fun, but that's what we got to do sometimes. We'll be back tomorrow taking your questions about whatever you want to ask about. I'm sure we're going to talk about Bo Bichette for sure, and the shortstop situation and any other thing. So if you have questions, you can send them to us via social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. You can send them to Jeff. He's at Snydog. You can send them to me at Vincents91. You can also send them via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. If we do another live show tomorrow, you can bring them into the live show, but you might want to get them in beforehand. If you're a Locked On Dodgers insider, you can text those questions now, and you're going to get the priority for your questions to be answered. And how can you become a Locked On Dodgers insider? You can go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, the text service, or you get text from us with updates and thoughts and breaking news and all that type of stuff. And you can ask questions for the show or just in general. You can also, if you're on YouTube, you can go to Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channel from the Locked On Podcast Network. Bring you can't miss analysis, opinions, and thoughts about the sports world and the LA sports world. So make sure to check those out. That's going to do it for today's episode. This is what happens when I go out of order. I forget what to say at the end, but I'm going to say you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Talk to you later. All that type of stuff.